Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
It's a beautiful day outside, right? Sunny. It's still cold, but sunny. So welcome everyone for coming. It's a pleasure to have all of you here. We're gonna have our lecture, and after the lecture we have our lunch and learn. Everybody's invited to stay. And so let's get started. Rafael will do an initial reading and the prayer. And just after that, Diclei will come and talk about year-end reflection on marriage. Thank you, everyone.
Good morning, everybody. Do not let the insult someone hurls at you ruin your day. Certainly, there are people who do not like you and even hate you. But this is no surprise, because you have the same feelings in regard to others. There is plenty of kind, notable people around you, so it is not right to waste time on those who constitute an exception on your path. Leave the offense on the floor of forgetfulness and continue in the direction of the love that awaits you. I want to invite everyone here to relax your minds, detach for this hour at least from our anxieties and our problems. And let's concentrate in our hearts, in this pleasant feeling of love that involves us as soon as we enter through the door of TSS. As soon as we sit in those chairs, we feel this love, the blessings from our mentors, from the spiritual managers who direct the activities of this house. And with our hearts full of this love, let's give our thanks, our gratitude to our Lord for allowing this to happen, for allowing this in our week, this source of light that will involve us and follow us throughout our whole work week. And let's ask in special for our friend and brother Marcos during his lecture, so that he can convey the necessary words and teachings for all of us. Thank you. So good.
Thank you, Rafael, for such a moving prayer. And welcome everyone to the Toronto Spirit Society. It's truly a blessing to be here. As Rafael said, among the turmoil of the week, it's always good to pause and come here. And I often think of the TSS as our little oasis where we take a break to remind ourselves that we are immortal spirits, that we have a greater purpose of being here, beyond our work, beyond our duties and dreams and aspirations. We are all here to learn, to love, and to become better individuals, better families, better communities, and that's how we'll make this a better world one day. But for now, we are going to talk about marriage and reflection. I think these two words kind of scared people. I don't know how many people are watching online, but if you dare to stick around, I bet there will be something interesting for you too. But yeah, reflection is something that we don't like very much, right? We kind of run away because it makes us see things that we don't like to see, whatever it is. And talking about marriage, it is not an easy thing. So much so that the lecture was pinging around, right? You're gonna do that lecture? No, I can't. You're gonna do the lecture. No, I can't. You're gonna. I said I can't, and here I am. So it's not an easy topic. With that said, are there married couples here? Raise your hands. Oh, there are a couple. Few of them. I can't see online, so maybe you say to Carlos and he will be able to read and see. Who has been married here more than 1 year? All right. Okay. Congratulations. It is an accomplishment in today's society. Who has been married here for more than 5 years? Wow. Pretty good. Double congratulations. Who has been married here more than 10 years? Wow, the hands are getting fewer and fewer, but yeah. Okay, more than 15 years. Wow. Okay, more than 20 years is the last one. Congratulations. It's a humble experience, right? As we are able to have a long-lasting relationship with someone. Is not an easy thing. It's easy to live with ourselves. It's difficult to live with ourselves to begin with, and living with someone else, it's also not difficult. Now, how many people here work for a company that have those lovely performance reviews? Raise your hands. Okay, so you know what I'm talking about. So you probably had already your year-end performance review. Am I right? Okay, there's a lot of people nodding. I had certainly mine. You sit with your leader and you have that conversation, how good or not so good the year was for you, things that you did well, things that you have to improve, and then usually there's a rating, right? If you are the top performer, you probably will get a 1 rating. Sometimes it's a different number, but usually number 1, you did pretty well. And then if you have a rating, a 2 rating on your goals for the year, it means you did okay, you did your job. Good, keep up, but do a little bit more. And then maybe if you get a 3, that means didn't meet expectations, and that is where things don't go very well, right? But we are hardworking people, and you know, most often we are meeting expectations or exceeding. Now imagine if we have to turn to our partner, to our husband, to our wife, and say, honey, if you have to give me a rating this year, what would it be? Would I be a G1? I exceeded all the goals and all your expectations. Or it would be a G2 because I kind of met your expectations and I have been a good wife or a good husband. Or maybe your partner would say, you know what? You would be a 3. You haven't been meeting expectations. Right? Who has here, you don't need to answer, who have dared to ask that question, right? But it's an interesting thing to do. I think we should actually evaluate doing that. The number, we should care less about the number, but the number itself will spark some interesting conversations. Oh, you think I am 1? Wow, that's pretty good. Why do you think that way? You may not hear that. It is likely that we are going to hear a 3. You're not meeting expectations. Okay. Why do you think that way? Oh, because of this, because of those. Are conversations that are going to spark from that. And as long as we keep in a reasonable level, there is value out of it. So year end coming, most of us take a break. Maybe you should have a quiet day, a quiet place, and have that conversation, right? After all, one of the things that we learn with Spiritism is our continuous effort to improve, right? Our inner transformation. And if we don't talk to each other, we're never gonna know. So we are not here to figure out which of our performance ratings as husbands or wives are this year, but we are here to reflect on marriage itself. What does it mean? Do we have the right understanding of marriage, right? Independent if we are married in the church or on the papers, right? If you have a judge who signed, or if we are not, we are living together as a couple. That's what matters, that relationship, right? Do we have really the right understanding? And often people say, you know what, this is I'll never get married. I'd rather be, a lone wolf, right, and do whatever I want. And then, in the 1800, not this year, but in the 1857 or 56, Allan Kardec asked the spirits about marriage. And he asked, is marriage the permanent union of two individuals contrary to the law of nature? Have you ever seen a bird marrying another bird and a little priest coming, or they signing a paper? They don't sign a paper. But there are kind of some types of animals that they have partners for life. Did you know that? Right? So he asked, is that contrary, our marriage contrary to the law of nature? And the spirits answer, it represents progress in the evolution of humankind. For humankind, it's a sign of progress. And he thought, interesting, right? And many of us would say, I'm not sure about that. But then he asked another question, 696. What effect would abolishing marriage have on human society? So what if we listen to those who are on the side of we should end the story about marriage, right? What would happen? A return to the life of the animals. A return to the life of animals. And then Allan Kardec writes here, the free and fortuitous unions of the sexes belong to the state of nature. Marriage is one of the primary acts of progress in human society because it establishes fraternal solidarity, and it may be found among all cultures, though under the most diverse expressions. So it establishes solidarity. It is not just an encounter because we feel attraction by each other, right? And we have a sexual relationship, and then we turn back and we disappear. Or a relationship where we stay with someone as long as I'm happy. If you're giving me what I need, we stay together. By the moment that things are not well, I will just leave. Where's the fraternity? Or when things go bad, right? We are happy, we are happy couples, and things go bad. I'm not sure about you guys, but things go bad in life. We all know that, right? So if there is no fraternity, we just turn the backs to each other and we part our ways. That's exactly what Allan Kardec is talking about here, about marriage. We stick together, we help each other, because there is something there more than physical attraction. Does it make sense? But how about going back to the animal lifestyle? He says, abolishing marriage would therefore be a return to humankind's infancy and would place humans even below some animals that demonstrate examples of stable union. So we just discussed here, right? There are birds that they migrate together and they come back to the same nest every year. They lay their eggs, they get their little birds, and they move again and then come back every year. So they have that relationship, that partnership. So even the animals. How about us? Right? So just to begin with, to have that understanding that yes, it would be detrimental to society if marriage was to disappear in any form. Now, in another book from Chico Xavier, there is a question. This book, The Consoler, unfortunately there isn't an English version yet. There was a question about the decision of marry or not to marry. Is this something that we do have a say? Is there free will, or there is the destiny? I'm here, therefore I have to marry. Or therefore it's written that I will not marry. Why? Do we have a say or not? And the Emmanuel actually answers to Chico Xavier saying, it is based on your reincarnatory planning. There is no well, there may be an accident, and we'll see about it. But there is a plan. All of us, not sure if you are aware, but there is a reincarnatory plan. The gender we are going to have, our health condition overall, the kind of life we are going to have, right? The type of trials that we're going to have, and also experiences, marriage and kids and etc. There is a planning. right? And we follow more or less around that plan. Even life expectation, there's a plan, right? We just don't know, because we want God and the good spirits want the merit of our decisions to be ours, right? It would be pretty easy if we know what's going to happen, right? So they leave the merit to us. So marry or not marry, yeah, it depends on our reincarnatory planning. And very often we rush things, right? Because we really don't remember 100%. We may have a feeling of the experience we're going to have in life, but there are different types of marriages and unions, obviously, right? And in the book Studying Mediumship from Martins Peralva, interesting that a book talk about mediumship, will define categories of marriage, right? And he talks about the fact that there are around 5 types of marriage. There are 2 types of marriage that are the most common one. Those are the marriages of trials. Those are spirits who come together to amend the bonds, right, that were broken in the past and resolve conflicts, right? We're together to help each other and establish fraternity again, establish forgiveness again. There are sacrificial marriages where one incarnates to help the other, right? So we see that in books from Emmanuel, in the romances of Chico Xavier as well, in the novels of Chico Xavier, pardon me. And there are obviously marriages of affinity, where spirits really love each other and they come to continue to evolve and improve and help each other. And there are rare cases, really rare cases, of transcendent marriages. Those are missionaries who come to earth in high evolved spirits, and we know one of them, which is exactly Allan Kardec and Amélie Gabrielle Boudet, who was on his side and worked alongside until the end of their physical lives to bring us Spiritism, right? But those are 4. So there's a 5th one, which is called accidentals, accidental marriages. This is when we rush things. We rush because we are desperate for whatever reason, and we meet someone out of our imbalance, and we have a sexual relationship, and all of a sudden we got to marry. We got to marry, and sometimes it's not an easy marriage, and it becomes work for the future incarnations to adjust that challenge, right? Maybe a marriage for money, like my wife and I marry her for her money. That's why we don't work. Actually, she has so much money. She's probably watching. So, in a serious note, yeah, there's people who marriage for interest, right? Would that be a healthy relationship down the road? Maybe not. Will that be a consequence on what I impose to my partner? Of course, right? Do we see marriages for a visa, for example, to stay in a country? Yes. Can we judge? No, we don't know what someone goes in life, right? They have their reasons for it. But if that relationship was not meant to be, right, there always the effort afterwards to amend and make that relationship really be a peaceful, a fraternal relationship. So, independent of the categories, right, we are going to take a look at what Miss Laura told André Luiz in Nossolar. Have you all heard about the spiritual city called Nossolar? Anyone? Okay, so there are spiritual cities around the planet, right? And on top of Rio de Janeiro, there's a city called Nossolar, or Our Home. And Miss Laura is a worker in the colony, in the city of Nossolar, and they were talking about her experiences. André Luiz was talking to her and asking for some instructions. And the chapter, there's a book in English called Nossolar. It's amazing. And there's a chapter 20 called Notions of the Home, right? It's really about what our home, our family, our marriage is really all about. from a spiritual standpoint, not from our materialistic, selfish point of view, right? So André Luiz asked, but the domestic organization of solar is just like the earth, right? And she said, it's actually not. With rare exceptions, married couples there on earth are still weeding the soil of their sentiments that have been overrun with the bitter weeds of personal vanity and inhabited by the monsters of jealousy and selfishness, right? And this is one of the hardest things when we get married, right? We had all the expectations, and when we start to put our two toothbrushes together for a couple weeks, right, we think about what we want, and the partner thinks about what he or she wants, and that's where the conflict starts. And it takes sometimes years, or maybe multiple marriage experiences, or maybe multiple incarnations for us to realize, maybe I should be thinking about what she wants or what he wants, right? If you read the Gospel according to Spiritism, the spirits are very clear. Selfish and pride should be our target. We should aim our energy. And marriage is a laboratory that helps us to address that. And then she continues, the last time I returned from the planet, I arrived here naturally harboring deep illusions. Deep illusions. We are filled with illusions, and over time we start to mature, right? Especially on the meaning of love. We start our marriages as naturally is, right? Based on attraction, physical attraction. But over time it starts to transform, and it has to what really love is. That's why we are on this journey, to understand what love is all about. Because that physical attraction is just the seed that must germinate. That's why she's talking about the illusions here, right? But it just so happened that during one of my crises involving wounded pride, I was taken to hear a great instructor at the Ministry of Elucidation. One day, a new train of thought entered my mind. So she got to the colony very confused with her illusions. One day, she participates in a lecture. Would you mind telling me about what you learned in this lecture? And she said, well, yes, the lecture was very versed in mathematics. We're talking about marriage here. And she said, well, the instructor was very versed in mathematics. Okay. Hang in there. If you are online, stick around, especially those who don't like math. He helped us, the audience at that time, to realize that the home may be compared of the lines of a right angle on the plane of divine evolution. Right angle. So for those who do not know what a right angle is, I'm going to draw here. The engineers in the room, keep me honest if this is not a right angle, please. It's a right angle, right? Okay. Alright. So the home, our families, or our marriage can be compared as a right angle. Okay. The vertical lines are the female sentiment, and it has to do with the creative inspirations of life. Interesting, huh? What does this leave to the male sentiment? So here is the female, and it's a subtle thing, but let's talk about sentiment. Because nowadays relationships are quite diverse from 1936, which is the time, or 1930s, right, when this was written. So we're talking about creative aspirations. And we can see the traits of that, right, in one of the couples. And this is one of the reasons why we guys don't have babies, right? Because it's different, right? One of the partners really have a more creative, a more sentimental style, and that's has to be that way to be able to bring about a child, right? Just to illustrate one example, right? Also, another thing is for us to live here on earth as partners, we need to make sure someone is looking to the horizon, is looking up to the sky, is thinking about our spirituality. That's what it means with that. But let's continue here. The horizontal line is the male sentiment, concerned with achievements in the field of common progress. Right? So here is the male sentiment. Male sentiment. Let's say earthly achievements. Achievements. Pardon my horrible handwriting. Does that make sense so far? Right? A representation of our home. So the home is the sacred converging point where the two lines, the male and the female sentiment, converge. Where men and women meet in order to understand each other correctly. Meet to understand each other correctly. That's why we are together. Because we may have a misunderstanding from this or past lives, right? And if we not, we understand ourselves forward, right? Working together for a common purpose. It is the temple where individuals should join spiritually rather than just physically. Isn't that interesting? Because sometimes when we join at the very beginning, we join physically. And we really don't know each other well. Now when we meet people over the internet and we want to marry after 30 days, do we really know each other? Sometimes even after we date for years and get engaged for a few years, when we get together, oh, where is that prince? Right? Where is that princess? Then is when we really get to know each other. Right? So we must evolve that relationship, and that's why, you know, we see some couples here with a few years on their scorecard of marriage. I bet all of you can reflect back and realize how much that expectation, that understanding of what a union is, changed from simple physical union to a spiritual union. And that is the natural way of doing things. Sometimes we feel strange that some cultures, they get married without knowing each other, right? They are in different countries, the parents arrange their marriage, their union, and we say, wow, that's an absurd. How come someone choose a partner for each other? But truly speaking, even when we meet someone and we want to get married, we don't know them completely. So independent of the style that we get together, it takes a while for us to truly see who each other is. Right? And how do we do that? Just reflecting. That's why we brought this topic at the end of the year, because usually it's a quieter time for most, and it's a good time to have that conversation. Not with rocks in our hands and pointing fingers, right? If there's a finger to point, that we point to us internally, and let's see how well we are doing or not, right? But it's a moment for reflection, because if we don't do that, things are not going to change, right? Let's move on here. Some go so far to state, let's keep it. After all, where in the circles of the planet we can find a real domestic institution, a real family that is based on true harmony, where rights and duties are legitimately shared, right? saying every family has a challenge. Every couple has a challenge. If we see those couples on Facebook, oh, they are so happy, I'll tell you, they have their challenge. They just don't post those challenges. And then we look at our partner. Gee, could I have chosen better? No, behind those pictures on Facebook or Snapchat or whatever, Facebook is for old people, that's what my daughter tells me. There is a story that is untold. If you take your street and go to every single house in your street, I bet you everyone has a struggle. Everyone has a challenge. Why? Because we are not perfect. None of us. We may look perfect after plastic surgeries and a few edits on Photoshop, but in here, we are not perfect. No one is. There was one perfect being that came to this planet. You know him well. Other than Jesus, no one is. Therefore, our unions won't be perfect. The majority of terrestrial couples spend their sacred hours of the day, because our time here is short. The clock is ticking for all of us, so the hours are sacred. There's so many people on the other side who would like to be here. They are in the line waiting because we are here. So our hours here are sacred. And the majority of the couples on earth are spending their time indifferently and selfishly, just thinking about ourselves. When the husband is at ease, husband is smiling and he's good, the wife seems desperate and is losing her mind. When the wife keeps humbly silent and well, her companions tyrannizes her. Isn't that how it works? One is good, the other one's going through a struggle. And then it flips. Imagine the two are at the same time. Then it gets worse, right? So when we see our partner having a hard day and we are okay, you should just think the positive side. I'm glad I'm okay. And let's help her. And the other way around. If he is not well and you're okay, well, I'm glad you're okay. Let's help. That's the angle. Coming together. Right? What happens in many cases is that we are so selfishly thinking about ourselves that both are just looking for their achievements selfishly. Being career or enjoyment of pleasures of life or whatever it is. If we are only looking after ourselves, there is no angle. You have a parallel line. Two solo lines. There's no engagement. There's no learning. There's no fraternity, as we started discussing, right? Or you may think, well, we should all then be thinking about God and thinking about who's going to work and pay the bills, right? Someone's got to get down to earth. That's why the 90 degrees angle is, according to the instructor, the perfect angle. Is that how it's called actually? The 9 degrees angle is the perfect angle? Maybe not. Okay. It doesn't matter. That's the target, right? In social circles, they put on appearances, as we just said, right? Go out with friends or on Facebook. They are the best couple ever. But in the private life, one takes long mental trips to faraway regions while the other talks about work. This never happens in our families, right? One comes, oh honey, you should see what happened in the office, and da 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 da. The other one, do you agree? Yes, I agree. Can you paraphrase what I just said? Honey, I gotta go. Right? So we're always disconnected. If the wife talks about the children, the husband thinks of his business, or the soccer game, or the hockey game, or whatever. When the husband tries to study some difficulty at work, the wife thoughts adrift in the designer's office or the next concern. So we are always thinking about ourselves. We don't stop and give our attention, give ourselves to the other. Right? What's the golden rule again? Do unto others what we'd like others to do unto us. Yeah, we all come from work tired, but I wish my wife would listen to me. Well, how about you start listening to her? Someone needs to start first, or else we are always like that, right? Oh, I wish my husband would really understand me. Well, why don't you start understanding him first? Someone's got to do it first, right? There's no other way. The two diverging lines are endeavoring in vain to form a sublime vertex in order to build a new step in the great stairways of eternal life. So if this doesn't happen, if that is spiritual union doesn't happen, one wishing to help each other, one giving time, energy, love, attention to the other, these angles don't connect. And look at this. They don't form a sublime vertex in order to build a new step on the great stairway of eternal life. So if you think a bunch of these angles together, right? It's a stairway. Did you say stairway to heaven? Reminded us of that song, right? Going up. That's what marriage is all about. So it's not an accident. It's not an accident. If we are married, it's because we have something to learn. What if we didn't? Well, we have some learning too. Or it's coming. Hang in there. Trust. Trust God. Trust your guardian angel. Trust your reincarnatory planning. And it better not rush. Because if we have a relationship that actually is an accidental one, it wasn't meant to be, it may be worse than having some time alone. Let's think about that, right? The most trivial subject has a peculiar charm. He's talking, I'm going to cut it short here, but he really talks about the beginning of marriage when we are very romantic and we open the door of the car for each other and we bring flowers, right? It's all about passion and the attraction, and especially when the kids come, boom, there's an implosion, right? Things change quite a bit. It's not an easy thing, but during that heat, when the fire is lit, that attraction starts to mold and transform into what love really is. Right? And it takes a while. It may take longer or not, depends on our efforts, depending on our reflection. Right? Yeah, and very often as well, I have to cut it short here, we see ourselves, I know there are some folks that love soccer here, right? So sometimes some of the unions really feel, the guys all got excited now, okay? This is supposed to be a soccer field, right? And sometimes in our marriages, we really feel like Brazil and Argentina, one playing on each side. We don't feel playing together for the same purpose. That's back to the fraternity. You gotta do what I want, he says. And you gotta do what I want, she says. And guess what? We don't get anything done. We go nowhere. The angle does not connect. Right? It may become those, see the two parallel lines here? That's how it is. That's selfishness. So love really helps us to reconsider that. And marriage is really the fire that will boil things down until we really understand that. That we change our paradigm from me to the other, to we, right? That's very important. If we don't understand that, there is a lot of suffering, and may take a while until we realize that. Marriage is renunciation. And the big challenge is actually our expectations. We have too high expectations. We expect perfection for our partner. and we forget that he or she is not Jesus Christ, number one. Second, we forget that we are not perfect. We expect perfection from someone, but we are not perfect. And we forget to forgive those imperfections. And we expect the partner to forgive ours. Because we think we deserve more. We think we are better. What is it called? Pride. We are back to the beginning of the lecture again. Selfishness and pride. So when we do our year-end commitments, right, as I used to do that long list, maybe we should pick selfishness. I ain't no selfish. Do you think you aren't? So let's think again. Let's think again. Right? So what do we do? How do we improve? How do we get out of this? How do we establish this this angle? And actually this could be a seminar, but we don't have time for a seminar, right? So maybe one little tool that we would like to share here is the question, how do we solve our challenges of marriage, our misunderstanding about what marriage is all about? And the question you should ask is, what can she do? Right? Isn't that it? If something is not going well, we look at our wife and say, what can she do? And the wife look at the husband, what can he do? Because he needs to change. No, she needs to change. It's never us who needs to change. Isn't that how it is? And is that the way in the office as well? We expect our boss, my boss is this. My team is this. My company is never us. We are always perfect. That's a sign that we don't have a good self-awareness to begin with, right? So the questions that we should be asking is actually, right? I'll try to make it clear. What or how can I something? How can I change? I'm not happy with the environment at home. How can I start having a little bit more peace here? What can I do to be able to listen, my husband? What can I do to support my wife? Or can I start ironing the clothes to begin with? That's a good start. It's a pretty good start. Who wouldn't like the husband here to do some ironing? Yeah, it may take 2 hours to iron a shirt, but it's a good start. He will get better on that, right? Who wouldn't like the wife to be able to listen to your challenges? Yeah, so the wife maybe will say, well, what can I do to help him to decompress when he gets home? Right? So those are the questions for reflection as a little tool. But it's important. It's never about the other. It's always about us. Commitment, right? It's commitment. It's so important that a friend of mine who was having some challenges, right? He went to a psychologist who happened to be Christians as well, and she asked a question to him that he said, where are you going with this? She asked, in the middle of the turmoil of your marriage in your life, where do you see God on this? Isn't that an interesting question? An unexpected question? Where do you see God? What do you mean? Well, do you think all this is accidental? She was not a Spiritist, by the way. Why are you in the middle of this? Why are you sticking with this? Right? And he said, well, I love my partner. And I feel God is giving me an opportunity to better myself. To improve myself. So, what are you going to do with that? Are you going to give up and throw it away? Or complain your partner? What can you do? Right? That's the question. So, as we said at the very beginning, marriage is a laboratory where we build a new man, a new woman, a new immortal spirit where we build relationships for eternity. That's why knowing that we are immortal beings make truly a difference. Because if we only think about ourselves selfishly in this life, when things start to drop, the muscle starts to go, and then we look at each other, that pretty beach boy is gone, the beer belly, right? It's gonna happen. Sorry to tell you, the muscles is gonna drop, other things are gonna drop, right? It's inevitable. It's gravity and it's aging. You can't fight that. So we need to find something else, or else we'll keep changing partners, right? You're changing your 40 years old for a 20-year-old, and guess what? There will be a time that no 20-year-old will look at you. It's just natural, right? So we need to find something else. We need to find what God is expecting from me here. And that questioning reminds us of a reincarnatory planning. It's by no accident, right? A few other things. And the gospel actually tells us about it, that we gotta shield ourselves. We gotta protect ourselves. And I'm going to rush this final here. This is from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 5, 27, 28. You have heard what it was said, you shall not commit adultery. But I tell you that anyone who looks at a woman or a man, let's fix this, a man, lustfully has already committed adultery with her or him in his or her heart. So if I look at someone else with a desire, it's already adultery in thought. That may be a shock for many. It's in the gospel. And so, well, that's Puritanism, right? Sexual Puritanism. No, this can be quite a damage to marriages. It goes back to expectations. You go to the magazines and see the strong, beautiful boys and your old man losing his hair, or you look at the women on Facebook and those magazines, right? And then you look at your partner, then it comes disappointment. It comes addiction to that. We are feeding our inferior, right, tendencies. We put high expectations, expecting perfection for our partners, and we become disappointed. We put our focus on the external things, right? We know from previous lectures, we don't have the time here, that our thoughts actually go around like a radio wave, connect with spirits, incarnated or discarnated, that think alike and come back to us in an immense scale, increase in that energy, right? So those thoughts come back to us with greater intensity, and it becomes a cycle. That's how relationships, for silly things like this, that are not silly things in fact, get damaged even further. And we keep having higher expectations from our partners, and we don't have courage to tell them on their face, and it's a downward spiral. So we have to shield our eyes. We have to shield our thoughts. A good way of doing that is looking at another man, another woman, and remind ourselves, that is my brother, that is my sister. My wife and my husband, yes, they are too, but it's different. But the others, right? It could be someone else looking at my kids, your kids. It's about empathy. It's about the golden rule, right? Maybe even when you're dating, you should have that agreement. If you're interested by someone else, come and tell me on my face, and then you go. I would rather do that than betrayal. And that applies to ourselves as well. That's honesty. That's how friends treat friends. And someone who sacrifices their life and give their life and their time for us in this manner, those deserve their respect, independent of how they treat us. So That's shielding the eyes in our thoughts. That's another tool, right? Another story was actually shielding the eyes here that I'm going to tell you. There was a case from Julio. This is in the book The Spirit of Truth from Chico Xavier as well. So Julio was a man. He was 30 years old. A humble man. He was a merchant. He has a business, and he got married with Julia, who was much younger. She was beautiful and liked to dress with colorful dresses, right? Very jovial and always happy to see friends. She wanted to go out and go to the movies and always smiling and loud laughs. It was somewhat a bit immature. But they went along so well. They were really a couple that everyone admired, and people started to gossip. People started to look at them. Look at that girl. I don't think she respects him very much. She must be betraying him. Right? And they started to come up with excuses and reasons for them to break up out of jealousy, right? You know, she's always in parties. Do you think she does anything at home to help her husband? No. And then got the mother-in-law of Julio involved, right? I mean, Marina is the name of the girl and Julio is the boy. So his mother say, you know what? You better put your wife on track because people are talking. And his friends started to tell him, hey, keep an eye on your wife. She's too pretty on the street. She went to the shopping alone. And he started to hear his friends, his buddies. Of course, who wouldn't, right? And he said, Marina, you know, I hear those things. And she said, honey, I didn't do anything. What you talking about? I love you and I'm honest. And he didn't buy that very much. After all, his friends, his buddies were telling him otherwise. So he kept that bug in his mind, and their spiral on their relationship starts to go down. He would get home after work, looking at her. Did she do anything today or not? The trust was gone, and that's very tough. When you lose the trust in your partner. What did you do today? Where did you go? Did you go to Caterina's house? Okay. At what time? Was Jacqueline's house. Was Marco there? Oh, okay. Hey, Marco. Was she there today? Yeah, okay, good. So we start to dig. We start to lose our focus on the important things in life. We start to doubt each other and we start to investigate. When you lose trust, that's very tough, right? So one day, Julio was at work. The phone rings. He picked up the phone. Julio, there's a guy in your bedroom with Marina. You better go home right now. He was desperate, right? He got a gun that he had in the office, put on his bag, run home, opened the gate very quiet. When he poked his head in the window, he saw both of them kind of kneeling right next to their bed, and he didn't even talk. He just fired and killed both of them instantly. And they all look at him with those eyes without understanding anything, and filled with remorse, he just shot himself in the head. He committed suicide, right? And after years in the umbral and suffering because of the suicide, he was finally rescued by one of the Spiritist cities. Actually, I think it was actually Nostolar. And then he finally understood that Marina was actually ironing his clothes for the next day, and the power plug didn't work. So she asked the neighbor to come and fix the power plug on the wall so she could iron the clothes for her beloved husband. But because of he listened to gossip and inferior thoughts from his buddies, he ended up with his marriage. He acquired an immense debt for killing his wife and his neighbor and committing suicide. Just because he was invigilant. He didn't shield his ear and his thoughts. right? And how many times we have in our relationships people trying to pull us apart. I bet you don't need to tell. Family members, friends, strangers, whatever. It does happen, right? Not saying we are saints. We may do something wrong in our relationship, right? Of course, it may happen. But be very careful. That's why dialogue, it's a precious thing to keep in a marriage. Because if you don't talk to each other, we can't build trust, we can't sustain trust. In an open conversation like, you know what, if you're interested in someone else, just go. Because love's free. If we try to imprison someone as a possession, it doesn't work well. That's not love. And we are not possessions. Right? What is worse, to keep someone against their will or let them go because of love? Of course, it's keeping someone against their will. It's a recipe for disaster. So, the last thing I want to say is another tool is shield your hands. What does that mean? Let's transform our laziness, our selfishness into the golden rule: do to the other what the other would like you to do to you. Help. What kind of help you like? What kind of help your partner like? Better correcting myself here, right? Is it cleaning the house? It is preparing a tea? It is whatever it is, just do it. Ah, but she is not doing it for me. Someone's got to start. Do you love him? Do you love her or not? Yes, I do. So do it. Love doesn't make that selfish math. Love, just do it. Not doing any advertisement for those brands, by the way, but just do it, right? Putting the garbage away, doing the clothes, simple things like that, right? Making an effort to be a bit more romantic, which is on my list, by the way, publicly saying. And I have other things to say, but friends, the time is up. The lunch is already there. I just want to say, as a summary for us, right? Marriage, our homes, is a divine lab, and we are there to learn what love truly means. And if we know what love truly means, let's do that reflection, right? In your private homes, you don't need to tell anyone, but do I think love is really attraction? Do I think love is having someone doing everything I want? Or do I understand love as doing everything you can for someone who you truly admire and respect and love? Even giving away your right to be right. Because you always wanted to be right. And love sometimes makes us give away the right to be right and just do what the other wants. And for the sake of this angle to hold together, someone needs to give. Because if everyone starts to pull things and get something out of it, it's not going to hold together. Let's shield ourselves. Let's pay attention to what we are seeing, what we have been watching, what we have been listening, what we have been saying to each other, what we have been doing to each other, or not doing to each other. That reflection itself will tell us if we know what love means or not, or if we are really focused on selfishness and pride. And the last one, do it first. Be the first one. If things are not good, you really love that person, you really want to change things around, do it. Be the first. Give the first step. And if you have to do the second step, give the second step. We discussed about divorce here. We didn't talk too much about this. But yeah, after trying so much, if we are getting at risk of hurting each other physically, if we are getting to the end of the hopes, and we are putting our lives at risk to some extent, mentally or physically, yeah, maybe that's not going to work out this time. but we should try with all our energy, with all our effort, with our love. And may God bless all of our unions that are here and the ones that are to come. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marcos.
Thanks, bro.
Where are you going?
Oh, I forgot. Time for questions.
See?
Oh my goodness, questions about marriage.
Questions or comments, anyone, or those watching us for the internet, please feel free to send us a message and Carlos will read for us. Anyone?
Any questions?
Any comments?
You can ask math questions that are easier than marriage questions. No questions?
Just one comment. You brought about the the family and the love between the family. I remember a few weeks ago we had a lecture about self-love. So Diclei always talked about the onion, the different layers. So if you want to go outside and start to spread the love to the society, we need to start with ourselves. That we talked a few weeks ago. Now with family and then going to society, right?
Exactly.
It's hard to go outside if we are not doing a good job internally, right? With us, with our family, our close friends, etc.
Thanks for bringing that up. That's a very important point, right? We expect to be saviors of the world, especially when we get to know Spiritism.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, this is great. Everybody needs to know about this. I gotta tell everybody, and I gotta get involved in so many volunteers and activities and all that stuff. And you forget your reincarnatory planning, which is number one, yourself, your inner transformation. Second, you have a family. That's the first school for you, your partner, your kids. And gradually starts giving time. Of course, let's not close ourselves, right? Of course, after all, we have a universal family. But if we are forgetting, neglecting your family for the sake of saving the world, what are the two words again? Selfishness and pride. I'm thinking I'm too big for my tiny family. See, those reflections no one can do for us. Only yourselves. I have been there.
And when we look to those guys like Chico or Mother Teresa that dedicate their lives to others, that's a mission. There's someone that came prepared for that. The majority of us are here to work with ourselves, with those around us, and it's not everyone to become those great missionaries, because we have a lot to fix before we get to that point.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Any other comments? Yes,
Grace.
please, Grace.
Yeah, if I can make it's more like a comment. I had lunch with a friend on Friday.
Can I ask a favor to come a little bit closer so people on internet can hear you?
Louder?
Yeah.
That's good.
It's good, Carlos? Yeah, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I had lunch with a friend on Friday, and she was actually mentioning that she was going through some difficult times in her marriage, and that her biggest mistake was that she was talking to everyone and asking to advice, and that the advices were not generally helpful in terms of bringing more worry to the relationship, like the story you told, like, oh, perhaps he's dating another person, for him to be doing this and that. And I was telling her, every couple has a different dynamic. You know the mistakes you make. You know in the bottom of your heart. And your partner knows, right? And you know what you were willing to give up and how much more you were willing to do. So look within yourself. I think that's the piece. I'm not saying that I'm the best wife in the world, but asking for advice is very hard, because when you go, you tell your own perspective of the story, right? So choosing carefully and look into yourself. I think it's a big point when you go through those difficult days, right?
Thank you, Grace. Yeah, exactly what we discussed about shield yourself. Yeah, you may want to talk to a friend or someone, but you gotta be careful. At the end of the day, people should not be telling you what to do. What they can do is raise questions that you yourself can ask, right? And you can take your own conclusions, because Chico Xavier always said that, right? No one knows what goes inside the four walls of your house.
Yeah.
Only every single one of us. No one else. So it's pretty easy for us and give you a prescription. do this. I'm not there every day. I don't know about your kids. I don't know about your husband, your parents, the whole situation, right? Your life. It's tough, right? So that's why it's so important, and I fail to say that here, because I have a beautiful poetry to read here. But praying, having that quiet time, that this family can connect with God, with ourselves, and our guardian angels, our true friends, who have no interest to give you the wrong advice. Their mission is to help every single one of us to fulfill our reincarnatory planning. So the best person for us to talk about mentally is our guardian angels, and every single one of us has someone there for us. So that quiet time, that prayer, give us clarity and will help us to come up with the answers, right? It's very tricky with people around us. It's not easy.
And people, and let's not forget the spiritual influence as well, right?
Yeah.
Those disincarnated that, you know, are there telling us things, and that we think that is our own thoughts, and try to see things in a different ways. What's, you know, the prayer that Marco just said is really important, because if you're trying to get that answer by yourself, and then you start to get the influence from the spirits, you know, what influences are you getting, right? Yeah. And the prayer will connect us to our mentors, our good spirits helping us, and not get connected with those who not really want to help us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else?
Thank you.
All right, so thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you for those watching us through the internet. We're gonna get prepared for the passes. I'm gonna ask for those watching us to close your own session with prayer, and hope to see you guys again anytime this week, maybe next Sunday. Thank you, everyone.